Thank you, Monty. Are you doing okay today?
Yeah, thank you.
You did a great job with your counter narrative. Okay.
Thank you.
And I use it. You'll hear later, but that's one of the ones I wanted to show other people.
Okay.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Fernanda.
Yes, of course.
It did work to restart it, so I hope everybody gets back okay. Who is it in the Wendy box? Who is that whose screen says Wendy?
Oh, I have no idea why it says Wendy. This is a Maya. Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that. I think it's because this is my mom's laptop, so it automatically goes to
That's fine. I just wanted to be sure I knew who it was.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me.
There you go. You changed it. Thank you for coming back in. Jason, you too.
Anytime.
All right, let's give everyone a chance to regroup. Welcome, Adriana.
Thank you. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. Except for this technical glitch.
Is the screen sharing option available for you now, Professor?
It is for me now. It's working
Okay.
properly for me. So as soon as everybody's back, I can put up our slides and we'll get going.
Okay, good, good.
Christoph, can you hear me? Christoph, can you hear me? Okay, I said I'd give to 11:45, so I'm going to give people a couple more minutes. I know that there should be several coming right back. Good. I'm glad you're back, Tyler. Let's see. Abdi.
Question.
Yeah.
Are we going to use this link for next week or the other one?
You know, I'm going to I may reset everything and just send you a new one because I don't know what corrupted that. Okay.
Well, no, I think I know what it was.
What do you think it was?
Well, no, because like a lot of people don't actually like do something else or don't pay attention like in this class. And you've probably noticed it. So I think somebody came in early and didn't hear you when you said, hey, can you check or do this?
Right. Well, it may have been hard to tell regardless, but probably, Tyler, it's safest just to let me regenerate and I'll send a new one to everybody. Okay.
Got it. Are you going to, is it just going to be this one or are you going to send another one?
I will send a new one. It'll be a new number probably. Okay, it'll be this, but what's tricky, anyway, it's kind of tricky to figure out when something goes awry like that. It's hard to debug it with this many people, and so I'm not sure what went on. We about, I think we're going to have to get going. I hope that this is everybody who was here. It's close to the right number. One of the things, well, I get my slides up. First of all, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you for trying to work with me to deal with it. One of the things that occurred to me is that every week it might be a good idea to say something good about being on Zoom. And I think the good thing I would say about Zoom last Friday and today is that at least we didn't have to go out in the weather, right? I hope that we're all safe and warm and not having to deal with the cold. So now, here's what we have for today. We're going to discuss Saeed Jones's essay, A Poet's Boyhood at the Burning Crossroads. And that's in part to set you up for what your writing assignment will be for next week. Then we're going to do a little in-class writing exercise that will also be in preparation for next week. Then I'm going to go over the essay I'm assigning. You're going to have a personal narrative due next to write after this class for your assignment due next Thursday. And we'll go over that in detail. I wanted to show you an example of a counter narrative that someone wrote well, but I have put three good examples where people did an excellent job with that assignment in a folder, and you can read them on your own time if we don't get to them today, but I'll show you where that is. I had wanted to complete class introductions, but I'm not sure we'll be able to, given we lost 15 minutes. And let me just say again, I'm used to this being a 2.5-hour class. I'm having to try to think very carefully about what to cover just to be sure I cover what you need. And so we're on a little bit of a tightrope already, so that mess up with the Zoom hurt. But let us go ahead now. We're going to work on at the Crossroads. I want to just look at it through the lens of the questions I asked you. And hold on just a second. Where'd my copy go? The one thing that two things I wanted to say though before we start answering those, and is that notice that this essay at the top, it said draft is a series about the art and craft of writing. Saeed Jones wrote this for a series about writing. In contrast, Junot Diaz wrote his essay in a series about mental health. But both of them, at some level, have to do with mental health. This one has to do much more directly with writing, though. But when I looked at the essay, I wanted to just make that context clear that that's where it appeared. When I pulled this out to read it over before class, I've been teaching this essay for almost since it came out, which was 2015. But I suddenly looked at the first sentence. The year I started writing poems, I dreamed about chains dragging along a dusty country road. What I think hadn't hit me so hard is how the first line is the year I started writing poems. And so we're going to deal with the kind of horrors that he was, the difficult things in his life, but this is mainly about how he started writing poems. So with that said, I want to ask, and I can't see you at the same time because of the screen up, but let's just see if, I'm going to just try to be polite with each other. I want us to name at least 5 facts, and we might say more. So somebody please just call out one fact about the speaker that he wants us to know about himself.
He wants us to know he's black. Sorry, Tom.
No, you can go.
A fact about him is that he's black.
He's black. Second, another fact, and that he's a he. We could say that's the first one, right? It's a male. What else?
That he's
The second, yeah,
sorry, Tyler.
no, it's fine.
Don't worry about being impolite. Tyler, why don't you go ahead? You've deferred twice, and we'll go to Fernanda.
Oh, well, I was gonna say he was gay, but then somebody else said it, but that's okay. I could come up with something else.
Well, I didn't hear it because people were speaking it. Fernanda,
Yeah.
do you have another thing? Male, black, gay, what else?
That's what I said before, that he wanted us to know that he was also gay as one second.
He also has anxiety.
Okay, good. And
He also feels alienated.
Feels alienated. What in both in anxiety, we're going to get a little bit where that comes from. Anybody else have another key fact about him? There's another important one we've left out.
Is it
Poetry is like his escape?
What in what way, Jason?
Like I can't remember exactly what I wrote, but he spoke about how whenever he would write these lines and then combining them together, he realized that he was like escaping that way in his own head.
Okay, but the important thing you said there, he writes, right?
He writes, yeah.
Okay, he's learning he's a poet. And so that's the fact that he's an artist is an important thing about him, and it's going to help him through his anxiety that Christoph mentioned. What frightening lesson did he, in his own words, did he learn about the brutal murder of James Byrd?
It's that you can be killed for being black or being gay.
Well, James Byrd, let's go one at a time. You jumped a little ahead, Tyler.
Sorry.
All right. James Byrd, it was being black, and realize this was a brutal murder. This was a horrific murder where a man was drugged behind a truck. Okay. And this was near his home. But when he learned of this, it was like he presents it as though it's his first recognition of realizing someone would kill you for the color of your skin. What did he learn from Matthew Shepard? Someone else who hadn't spoken, tell us. What did he learn from the brutal murder of Matthew Shepard?
That just by being gay, this is Amani, by the way, that you can get killed as well.
Yeah, for being gay is another reason. So that brings us up to number 4. Why do and this should be obvious at this point, but why do these 2 murders touch him so deeply? What did they make him think about himself?
Amani again, but these 2 murders touch him personally because it made him realize that it's like he's literally just like a lose-lose situation by literally just being like a gay black man. So either way, like he has like no chance really, because it's like two like things are against him. Basically, he can get killed by the color of his skin, but also because of his sexual preference. So it's a lose-lose situation for him either way.
Yeah, losing situation. Does anybody have the exact phrase that he said? Didn't he say it's almost like a death warrant, a death wish?
He says being black can get you killed, being gay can get you killed, being a black gay boy is practically a death wish.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So this is what he's confronting. And we hear a little bit about his life in the closet and how it's difficult. He doesn't want to cry about Matthew Shepard in front of people because it will call too much attention to himself. He sees a play about him, but he can't respond. He wishes he was like the women in the class for whom it was okay to cry. Okay. So now let's go and Jason touched on this earlier, but when he was young, he said he was frightened by what he knew about himself and he couldn't talk about. And that's essentially him being a gay man. And I wanted you to talk about how poetry helped him. So let's just talk about this a minute before let's hear what you had to say about that. Somebody get us started on this. How did writing help him deal with his fears and with his knowledge of himself?
essentially it allowed him to escape the world that he was currently in, which didn't truly accept him, to go to somewhere else where he could like express himself.
Okay. He could express himself. He found a certain comfort there. Anybody else put it another way? What is some of the how did he talk about what writing did for him?
This is Kalia. He says like towards the ending how he feels more brave, and he feels as though like he can put like images to the words and make like it better helped his responses to things.
Good. Okay. Being able to express himself did that. Notice that he says too that in writing, he could even imagine himself as a woman, and that somehow was liberating to him. His imagination set him free. And he goes on to speak, and we're going to stop here because we have to get to some other things. He goes on to speak, though, about he also learned that there were many other Black gay writers, Black writers and Black gay writers. And so he suddenly had a company of people he admired. He had role models that certainly must have made him feel less alone. And in the same way, I happened to pick up the first sentence. The last sentence jumped out at me, and this is going to come out a little bit later, but I'll connect it for you a little later in class. But he says, the last line is, without fail, after I finished a poem, or when a poem has decided it is finished with me, I feel just a little more fully realized, a man coming into complete and vivid focus. And I mainly wanted to underscore that because writing helped him understand himself. And he was more fully realized because he had expressed something. And we may get a minor variation of that in what you will write. It may not seem as significant, but I want you to try to think about that as you write. You're about to do a personal narrative about something from your life. And with luck, when you write it, you understand it better. You discover a little bit more about yourself. And that's what he talks about here. All right. So I want you to think for a minute about both the Terra and a poet's boyhood at the burning crossroads. And if you think about it, what do both of them have in common? What is it that they share?
Fear.
Fear?
Yes.
Jason, okay, what do you mean by fear? Elaborate just a little bit.
Well, after the beatdown and the terror, he was just scared the whole time until he stood up to his fear, and he obviously overcame it in that type of way. But he was evading it and trying to escape the brothers. And in the poet's boyhood, he's also in fear that he could possibly die from these examples that are happening around him. Until he starts realizing that there's other poets and other writers out there that are in the same situation that he's in, and they're successful and they're also out there, and he sees, like the light in that tunnel as well.
Very good. All right. They both are dealing too with, we could say trauma even, right? I mean, they're dealing with some horrible, one's been bullied. The other one is just realizing the world is a very dangerous place, and especially dangerous for him. But they both are about confronting some moment in life when things were very difficult and how they got through it. And I want you to think about that, because that's going to be part of what I'm going to be asking you to find something in your life where you faced a great difficulty and how you got through it. That's part of what you'll be doing. So let's just leave these, because I want to get to, we need to move. We've got a good bit to cover now. And I want to get to our, to the writing assignment. And so you can use a pencil. You don't need to be typing on screen, but I want you to take a minute. We're going to take about 20 minutes. And I want you to write about a time when someone treated you really unfairly. And I want you just to begin writing right away, and we'll go for about 20 minutes. So just take a deep breath, get your writing utensil out, and this is what I want you to write about. Okay, hold it just a second. I want you to stop. This is an experiment. I actually didn't want you to write. I wanted you to see what that felt like. So what I want you to do now is, instead of writing what I ask you to, jot down some notes about this. What did it feel like to get that assignment? Why might it have been difficult to write in that situation? And how would you want to change the assignment to help you write better? Quickly think about these 3 questions and how you would answer them, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I'll give you a minute to gather your wits about that, to shift gears and and think about that. Okay, let's see if we can talk about this just a minute. What did it feel like to get that assignment? Who's willing to speak up about that?
I felt somewhat nervous.
Why so, Tyler?
Well, I felt nervous because since it's in class, I didn't have a lot of time, and I thought that I might end up turning in something that I'm not particularly pleased with, and that's never fun.
Okay, so didn't have time, right? And what was the very first thing you said?
The very first thing I said was that I felt somewhat nervous.
Nervous. Okay, Johnny, you were about to speak. What would you add?
I don't know. I felt like this intense thing to try to find an experience quickly, but I think I was having a hard time because I probably blacked out a little bit of those experiences. You know, like I don't remember them very well.
Okay. Yeah. Think about what I asked you. What did I say? Write about a time when you've been treated unfairly. Is that an is that an easy topic?
It wasn't. No, it's intense for me. Like I was like, damn, I have to really think about negative things in my life.
Yeah, it's never that easy to confront something that's difficult. And so that would be all the harder with the time limit too. But, you know, and it may be talking about something you don't want to, you've really pushed aside, don't want to think about. Somebody else, just give us another thing or two about why it would have been, how it made you feel, or why it might have been difficult. I think we've heard some major things.
Yeah, I think it felt like being in an interview, because it's a common question for interviews. So I think that's why we all felt like that we needed to come up with an answer. So
Abdi, did you feel on the spot?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and let me say, when I've done this before, sometimes students say, well, I was ready to write, I had something I could jump into. That's good. But what would you change? What would have made this a better assignment for you?
If we had gotten a heads up beforehand.
What do you mean by beforehand?
That I like, it would have been better had you to email us and you'd been like, yeah, so we're going to be writing, we're in class, you're going to be writing about a time that you were treated unfairly, so get prepared.
Okay.
Or think of something beforehand.
So you would want to know ahead of time. And by knowing ahead of time, what does that allow you?
It allows you to get material, which is, to go back to what she said. And it also allows you to get prepared to present something to the class. Okay. So you can dispel some of the nervousness.
So you get you're able to think better with it. All right, very good. So, oh, I'm sorry, this was supposed to guide that talk. All right, so you've answered these. So this is what you got at there. Notice that the biggest thing that was missing was time, okay? This is why you value the writing process. And we're going to, I bet all of you have heard about the writing process, but that's what we're going to talk about now. The writing process, you typically are able to think ahead, or at least it gives you a way into how to manage well if you have a short window. All right, so where are we going here? So here are the concepts we're going to take up. What's the purpose that you're writing for? Who is the audience? And the writing process. These are three components that almost all writing textbooks talk about. So let's dive into each one of them just briefly. So the audience is, who am I writing for? And, you know, questions that might come up. What do they know about my topic? What is their interest? You know, where do we start, kind of? The purpose is more, why am I writing? What am I trying to accomplish? What point do I want to make? But those two things are something you always have to think about when you write. So here's the confession. Audience and purpose, though, tend to be a lot more real for professional writers. They tend to be artificial for students. Artificial meaning not so real, kind of fake and difficult and tricky for that reason. So why is that? When you're writing in school, you often don't choose your topic. You might have options, but you usually don't have complete choice. You also have to write, let's face it, whether you're interested or not, whether you're passionate about the topic or not, okay? It's not like you just get to talk about something very close to your heart. It's also true that most of us don't feel like we're great writers. Some of us may feel like we can't write at all. And so who would be interested in reading what we want to write? We have to overcome that sense that, you know, we're not a writer anyway. And another reason it's artificial is that you're mainly writing to develop and demonstrate your skill, to become a better writer. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, I'm sure, would say that every time he writes, he's trying to become a better writer. But here you're doing it in a very narrow sense, in a classroom setting, trying to improve, show that you can write well and can improve what you're doing. So how do we deal with that? One of the things I want you to think about is just convince yourself that you have an audience interested in what you want to say, what you have to say. You have to make that leap, you know, that somebody's on the other end of the phone and they're actually listening to you and they're eager. You can think of your audience as me, you know, and any other teacher you have, and picture your classmates. That gives you, and even though we're not in a classroom, it's harder to do it over Zoom, but think about your classmates. They're going to have similar assignments. They're going to be telling you their experiences. You're going to be telling them yours. And so there's a little community there. And look at every writing assignment as well to motivate you. This is your chance to show your writing skill and to develop it, to show your thinking, to show your understanding. So it's both a learning opportunity, but it's a place to show what you've got, okay? And if you do these things, I think it will help push you just to write better and to show what you know. And so this is how I want you to think about purpose and audience. Don't make them real, okay, by thinking, you know, picturing there's somebody who's interested in what you have to say and that there's a reason for writing, that you have a good motivation for doing it. So in contrast, here's just one more word about purpose. Why am I writing? What am I trying to accomplish? In the personal narrative, think about, there's a story that you're going to tell about yourself. You're going to tell a story about your life, and you want to tell it so others will understand it, and you want to tell it to help you understand it better. Think back to what Saeed Jones said there about every time he had finished, he felt a little more fully realized. When you write a personal narrative, you have a chance to understand something better about yourself. Okay, So now we're getting to the writing process. And there are various ways people talk about this. When Tyler said if he had known the topic ahead of time, he could have done some thinking before he started writing, right? But the writing process is just this going from getting some ideas, some planning, to drafting, revising, meaning changing what you wrote. Revise means to receive. The vise in it is from vision. Looking at it again to be sure it's good, and editing to correct. These terms get defined different ways. Sometimes it gets simplified down to pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. Sometimes that's planning, writing, and revising. But the point is that you think before you write, and then you look carefully at what you wrote to make it better. So here's the thing about the writing process. I'm being really frank to say that, purpose, audience, you don't have an audience like a sports writer for the Boston Globe talking about the Celtics, okay? You don't have a huge following out there. But the writing process is real. Everybody who writes, the better they work the writing process, the better they're going to write. But everybody uses it. You can develop it and use it to do your best work, to get better. Every professional writer is constantly using it, and they need it just as much as you do. You probably use a writing process. The question is whether you use it in the best way possible, and how might you strengthen your use of the writing process. Let me pause for a second too. One real difference between student writing and all the things you read in publication, you have to realize that so much of what you see in print is not only written by people who are somewhat professional writers in one way or another. They've not only used a writing process, they also have an external editor who reads for them and helps them make corrections. And so some of what's published is so polished is because it goes through more than one person's hands. And we don't generally have that advantage as students. But I want you to think about that, because part of what you have to do as a student is almost be your own publishing house. You have to do the planning, the writing, and you have to check yourself very carefully. And but anyways, just to let you know that in some ways, it's very difficult for student writing to reach, what winds up in print. And when you're coming close to that, you're doing something very, very well yourself. Okay, here's a more elaborate graphic on the writing process. And here, there's the planning. There are different tools you can use to planning. Maybe you've created an outline. I like to just have topics. I don't necessarily have things in very detailed order, but some amount of brainstorming, focusing in. Sometimes people just write to see what they come up with and then use that to sort of organize more their ideas better. But once you start writing, and especially on a computer, you're kind of writing and rewriting constantly, right? I mean, it's not like it's completely linear. Your drafting is always involving going back to be sure you're being clear, being sure you've got right examples. Do you have some kind of flow? Are you using the best words you can? But once you get a whole draft, you step back and you edit, you correct what you have there. This editing is more at a proof level: spelling, grammar, punctuation, capitalization, just checking yourself. What I want you to get in the habit of, and here it's more like you're trying to improve it. Do you have the best details, best examples? The essay you have for next week is due on Thursday. I really urge you to find, and we'll talk about this more in a second, but finish by Tuesday. Finish drafting so you can let it sit and read it fresh. That gives you a lot better chance of correcting yourself, okay? And so the more you have to just write something and turn it in, the less likely you are to catch simple, obvious errors that you should be catching. All right, so there's the writing process. Here's just a little word on process itself. We all want better results. Like if we had a business, we want it to make more money, okay? If we're in school, we want to make good grades. If we're running a chemical plant, we want to be sure that what comes out of the plant is the right quality. Well, how does all that happen? You can't do it by focusing on the results. You do it by working the process, being sure you understand what's involved in learning to do better. Think about as a student, if you never read your homework, which I went through many years of elementary and high school, thinking that I didn't need to read things at night, that's going to keep you from being as good of a student as you can be. If you postpone assignments over and over instead of allowing yourself to do them in smaller steps or whatever, if you don't work the process, you're going to penalize yourself. The better you get at the process of studying, at the process of preparing yourself for tests, the better your results will be. So let's just stick with the student analogy there. But this is a very common thing in engineering, that if you want to build cars that aren't lemons, you do it by being sure you have a process that really puts things together right and checks to see that they are. All right, so now I just one of the things that's important and goes hand in hand with the writing process is time management. Notice that you said one of the worst things about having 20 minutes, getting an assignment in 20 minutes to write is you didn't have any time. You didn't have any time to think. You had to jump right in. And so time management means you're getting the most out of the time available to you. In this case, you're going to have several days. Sometimes you will come into class and get a topic and need to write on the spot. But regardless, you have to manage the time well. So what I want we're going to look at a graph that talks about an engineering approach, in this case to writing, and the typical student's or an engineering approach to a task, and a typical student's approach to an out-of-class writing assignment. And don't laugh too hard when you see the graphs. I had to draw these by hand. All right. But on this axis, we have effort. How hard are you working? And here we have time, like say that the assignment was made on Wednesday and it's due on Wednesday. The typical student response is the red arrow, or the red line, excuse me, where nothing happens for days. And at the very last minute, there's a flurry of work and the work gets turned in, okay? Contrast that with getting an early start doing things, get a draft, and then check, be sure that what you have's okay, so that when you turn it in, you're really all done. You're not in this panic state of the red line, but you've been able to finish, check yourself very carefully, and turn something in with confidence. So I think of the red line version, this red line version is kind of the buzzer beater, hoping you can always just get a win at the last second. And that's not nearly as reliable as using all the time available to you, starting early so that you have a good chance to know that you're going to finish strong and be able to assess yourself what you have. I hope that makes sense. I can't see you while I'm doing it, but usually this is not a concept I was aware of as a student. And I think it's, there's almost a kind of bravado in seeing how long can you put things off and then still do okay on them. But it's much smarter to work in the engineering model. All right, so the writing process just says manage your time. For out-of-class assignments, that means start early, plan before you write, allow your time to revise with a fresh mind, not as soon as you finish when you can't see what you wrote clearly, but like the next day. And then even then, still proofread your final paper. When you write in class, usually there's something that you've done, you have something to prepare. We'll have some assignments later where I'll give you something to read at home, but you won't get your topic till you come to class, okay? You prepare then by reading and being sure you understand and being ready to field a question. But regardless, you prepare in whatever way you can. And you, even in class, even if you just get the topic in class, don't start writing immediately, but plan a little bit so you'll know where you're headed. And before you turn it in, you take a deep breath, you get up and go get water, you come back and reread and see if you can improve anything before you turn it in. That's the way you get the writing process to line up with time management. All right, so this is the simple version. Just think before you write based on what you thought, or what you're thinking. And then once you've written, think about what you wrote. Be sure you've done it. You've said what you meant to say. Be sure that you haven't made silly mistakes. Be sure you've punctuated as best you know how. That's what you need to spend some time doing. Okay, let's see. All right, so we're about to go to your homework. And what you're going to be doing, you're going to be writing a personal narrative. Narrative just means a story about yourself, okay, but something that happened to you. And the focus is going to be about a difficulty that you faced and overcame. That's kind of the parallel to The Terror by Junot Diaz, or A Poet's Boyhood at the Burning Crossroads by Saeed Jones. You're going to talk about a difficulty. I've got the assignment in your essay folder, and I'm going to go there in just a minute. And I want you to post your essay by or before Thursday. And again, given what we just talked about, start as soon as you can. You would be great if by, at any point, but at least by, say, Monday or Tuesday, you'd already drafted it. Then you would be in a good position to check your writing. And your only other assignment, I'm not giving you a new reading, but I am going to ask you, I do want you to keep up with your journal writing. Now, let me pause there a second, because, one of the good things about Google Drive is I can look into journals anytime I care to. Several of you are off to good starts. Several of you haven't put anything in your journal. And so I just want to underscore, I said your journal's worth 10%, and that can be enough to help you pull a grade up a letter, all right? But it doesn't only work for you. If you don't do your journal, it's going to bring your grade down, okay? It's probably also indicative of not keeping up with other assignments. And so I want to just sound the alarm that if you're not already journaling 4 times a week, you're really putting yourself in a hole, and you're missing the chance to help your grade just by writing a minimum of 3 sentences 4 times a week. Okay, so you really do need to be keeping up with that. So hold on, forgive me that. Yeah, so one other word, I did used a different method for recording the class last week, but it worked fine. I'm recording it on my computer, and then I post it to YouTube. And so if there happens to be anything you need, you should be able to go to the class recordings folder and find a recording of a class. If that just want to confirm that's still working. We're going to go to your assignment in just a second. Oh, all right. So this is important, and this has to do with whether you're keeping up or not. I've graded counter narratives. You wound up having 2 weeks to submit it. A good number of you did not do that assignment. So I just want to officially say it's now too late, okay? If you haven't written it, you should be doing your next assignments. This is just one assignment you won't have completed. I did choose 3 good examples, and I put them in a student folder that I'll show you in just a minute, a student examples folder. And if we have time today, I may read one of them. If we don't, you should go read all 3 of them yourself. It's good to see your peers' work, because it helps you understand this can be done, that it can be done well. You can see how other people approach the same assignment and how they came out. But again, if your counter narrative isn't posted, you need to move on. And the way this works, if you've done all your assignments -1, there'll be a slight penalty, but it won't be, you still may get through it. But if you don't have 2 or you don't have 3, you're quickly putting yourself where the penalty is going to outweigh anything else you've done, and you need to be keeping up. All right, so now let's go to your personal narrative. And I need to get out of screen share. And let me get out of screen share and go to into Google Drive. Let's see. I'm sorry, I thought I had this set up, but I probably got closed at some point without realizing it. So hold on. Oh. Is there a question?
Oh no, sorry. I was looking at the 3.
Okay. All right. So look, I've come to our assignment folder. So just to point out a couple of things. Remember, this is where you can find a document that has links to all the recordings. This is where I put 3 examples of counter narratives, 3 good examples that I got, and it was Amani's, Johnny's, and Tyler's. And I hope none of you mind, I almost took the names off because sometimes people like it anonymous, but these were good examples, and so I didn't think there was anything at all wrong with giving credit for them. But when you read these 2, you'll see that at the end of them, I've pasted my comment. And so you can see why I thought that it was a good response to the assignment. So I strongly encourage you to come back and read there. If we were meeting for 2.5 hours, we would have taken all of these up in class, but because we're not, I posted them for you. So now I'm going to come to your essay assignments folder. And here's the assignment for this week. So just bear with me. I'm going to kind of walk you through this. I've already said you're going to write an essay about a time you went through a great difficulty. And I want you to focus on what the difficulty was, the effect it had on you, and what finally helped you overcome it. Think about, like in Juno Diaz's case, he said finally he just stopped and turned and looked at him. In Saeed Jones's case, he discovered what writing could do for him. But they both, you got a deep portrait of the pain they were in, the difficulty, and then you got a sense of what pulled them out of it and why it was important to him. But think of those essays as a kind of model of what you're going to try to talk about. This is going to be due next Thursday. If you finish sooner, great. And by all means, start sooner, right? Like we just went over. Start as soon as you can this weekend, so that you have, the maximum opportunity to make it better. I'm going to be expecting it to be anywhere from 2 to 4 pages, developed enough so that you make a good statement about, there's a development in detail about what you're writing about. This is all very simple. You can do this, by the way. You can go in and create a Google Doc in your student folder and just write it there. But double space it, 12-point type. I ask you to double space because it's a little bit easier to mark things up. But since they are online, it's easier to mark than it is if it were written by hand. I want you to be sure you give your essay a title. That's a great opportunity to point your reader to what this means to you or what's important. It's kind of a window into what you want to emphasize. So be sure that you give your essay a good title. For the file name, in the same way I've shown you, just name it personal narrative and put the date on it, whatever date you complete it, okay? And again, I'm asking you to put these dates before your file name so that they'll line up chronologically, okay? So that's what you need to do there. All right, I'm going to be looking, any questions so far? I'm going to be evaluating it mainly on the quality of your writing, how well you've done it, how clear it is, how detailed, how well developed. That's what I'm going to be looking at. I also, though, want you to be sure that you plan it, draft it, revise, and correct it. And let me say that if we were in class and you were, turning in papers instead of doing this all electronically, I would, on this assignment, I would actually collect your first draft versus your final draft. I tried to do that last semester in Google Doc, and it was really hard to tell drafts apart. It wasn't as obvious as like looking at paper copies versus draft type copies and so on. So I can't get you to turn in multiple copies, but I'm wanting you all the same to be sure that you go through the whole writing process. I'm stressing again time management. Be sure that you manage well. Start sooner. Okay. Give your time give yourself a chance to check yourself. Start early and take advantage of the time. All right. So here's some other guidelines. I won't always say this much, but I'm trying to just get you thinking about what it'll take to do well. First of all, most importantly, apply the whole writing process. Think about think about different difficulties. You don't have to, you may not immediately think of the best one. Brainstorm some different points that might be possible. And then by all means, choose something that's easier for you to write about. Not if it's so difficult, so painful, you don't have to write about that. You could take up something simpler. But complete a draft early, come back a day or two, be sure you read and carefully improve what you have. Sometimes, again, teachers say, don't ever use I. This isn't that assignment. This is your story. So you can use I. You're telling something yourself, and you're telling it, assume you're telling it to the rest of us here, okay? I want you to give yourself, stories have a structure. They start, they have a middle, and they have an end. So at the beginning, somehow look at how you can get us interested in what the difficulty is. Interested and describe the difficulty. In Junot Diaz, he did it in a sentence. He just said something about getting jumped when it wasn't a good time, as though if there were ever a good time. Saeed Jones starts out talking about learning about the death of James Byrd. But get your opening in a way that will give us attention. The middle is more where you're going to explain how the difficulty affected you and how you overcame it. But in your closing, Johnny, I think you need to mute, please. Thank you.
Sorry, my bad.
That's all right. In your closing, before you end, you do want to make sure that you've underscored why this was significant for you, why it was important, okay? So be sure that it doesn't end. You may have explained the difficulty, how you overcame it, but say something about why this was important to you and why it was worth writing about, what you gained from it, what you learned, what you lost, whatever it might be. All right. So make the opening get our attention. Try to be sure that it encourages to read on. Organize the middle. Organization in a narrative is typically just chronological order. What's the order things happened in time? That's what it happened in the terror, excuse me. That's what also happened, that Saeed Jones was basically a little, he talks about James Byrd, he talks about learning about Matthew Shepard, talks about writing, those kind of mixed together. It's just not strictly as chronological, but still, it's not a complicated way to organize. Chronological just means what came first, what came second, what came third, and so on. Write as vividly as you can, help us picture what happened. I'm just putting out and here's a reminder, if you tend to write long sentences, be sure you write some short ones. And if you write a lot of short ones, put some long ones in. Give some sentence variety, so that helps keep what you write interesting. Think about your paragraphing. Don't write 4 pages that is one paragraph, okay? Think about where you would break, where the subject's changing or the time's changing, and it's best to signal that by showing a new paragraph. You may be able to incorporate a little bit of dialogue. That can make moments more vivid. Think about in The Terror, how he said when they were holding him down, he could hear the brothers saying, hit him in the teeth. There may be just some phrase or two that will help make things more vivid. Let's see. again, be sure by the end you've stated why it was important, even restated if necessary. Just be sure we understand the significance of the event. And this reminder is about punctuation. Just pay attention to where your sentences start and end, and be sure you put periods at the end and capitals to start the next one. Or if it's not a period, it's a question mark or it's an exclamation point. But be sure you pay attention. Don't run your sentences all together. Don't break them up into little fragments. Be sure that you're acknowledging where sentences begin and end. And then finally, as part of the writing process, be sure that you proofread your final draft. Okay, so let me stop. Any questions about this? Y'all are good. It's easier to tell in class whether it's sinking in, and you could interrupt me. But again, realize this is in your assignment folder. You can come here and read it. You can check back on it, but I hope the shape of it is very clear to you at this point. So I apologize to the people who haven't introduced themselves, and I'm actually feeling that lack because I'm looking at some of your papers and know I haven't heard you say more about yourself, but I'm going to postpone that till next week. And instead, since we're about to start on a reading assignment, let's look at one of the counter narratives. And if you didn't do this, you missed a chance to, I think, do some enjoyable imaginative writing. All three of these are good examples, but today I'm just going to go in alphabetical order and go with Mani's because hers was the first that I read. Mani, are you there?
Yeah.
Would you mind reading?
Sure.
It's okay. It's nice to hear somebody besides me, and you did this work. So if you don't mind reading it, and if you can see it here, can you see it okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll scroll for you.
Okay. Oh, I'm nervous now. Okay.
And Monty didn't put a title, and I don't think anybody did actually, but always keep thinking about titles. I want you to use those as one of your tools, one of the things that can help things be even better. But Monty, go ahead now.
That one day runs through my mind over and over. It pains me every time I see him, but my brothers can't know that. All I feel is guilt, regret, and shame that I not only physically hurt this boy, but added more fear and anxiety that I'm sure he has from being the only student of color here and being alone. I didn't want to do it, but I had to in order to protect my brother and to not be looked at as a wimp or a pushover. I remember my...
Pause a second. So you can see, if you remember the assignment, Amani is taking the, at least here it says, I feel regret. The brother's feeling guilt, regret, okay? But he's telling us why he did it. Go ahead now. I'm sorry. I was just trying to help show what the progress you'd made.
I remember my younger brother running over to us with tears almost waterfall-like running down his face. Immediately, I was enraged and I wanted to know which little prick it was that made my dear brother cry. I was mad, of course, but I never intended to hurt anybody, maybe tell them off and scare them, but that's it. We were guided to the little twerp, and the second I laid eyes on him, I knew I didn't want to hurt him. He looked so helpless, defenseless, honestly, and he had no idea what was coming to him. The fear in his eyes was too evident to ignore when we approached him, but I had to do what I had to do to protect my reputation and my family. Let's hold him down.
Pause a second. Look at all those really good, there's a lot of things that are really vivid here. The waterfall-like, but the little twerp, there are various things here that make this feel very real. Keep going.
Let's hold him down, my older brother said to me as he grabbed the poor kid and prepared him for his beatdown. I'm the second oldest and I did what I was told. In a blink of an eye, punches were thrown at rapid speed, blood dripping everywhere, and to this day, I couldn't tell you which part of his face it was falling from. I stood there still as a rock filled with instant regret. If I could have found a way out of being a part of this monstrosity, I would have. His screams were loud at first, but eventually grew faint as I blocked everything out as much as I could, and my mind became louder than his cries for help. I really just wanted to pull him away from my obnoxious brothers and protect him. I wanted to apologize and tell him to run away. When my baby brother felt that he was finished with the kid, we let him go and ran away. All the way home, I couldn't think of anything else but the harm and damage I just caused that helpless boy, all because I couldn't stand up to my brothers and walk away. We saw him quite a few times after that day, but he dodged us most of the time. Each time I saw him turn around or go a different way because of us, I got this feeling in my chest that I can't explain. I know we were wrong for hurting him. I was wrong because I should have spoken up and not let my brothers do what they did to him. We scarred that boy for life when all we should have done was walk away.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
A few weeks later, my brothers and I were walking to the nearest corner store when I spotted the kid I've been thinking about since the day my baby brother ran to us crying. We made eye contact and I could tell that his body instantly tensed up. He didn't run away like usual. Maybe he was going to get his revenge and hurt us back, I thought to myself. But nope, he stood still as we walked right past him. My older brother scowled at him in an attempt to scare him, but I couldn't even look his way. To the young boy that my brothers and I have scarred, even though I'll never get the chance to say it to you, I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my brothers. I'm sorry for enabling them by holding you up. I'm sorry for my inability to speak up for myself. I'm sorry for putting more fear into your heart that I know you didn't need more of. I'm sorry for being a wimp instead of standing up for you. My brothers may not be sorry, but since that day, I made a vow to never let myself be a part of something I know is wrong and unjust ever again. I hope that kid heals and doesn't let fear take over his life. I'll forever remember that horrible day, and I hope he moves on from it.
Excellent, Monty. Okay, that was even better hearing you read it.
Thank you.
And I, first of all, one thing I want you to see that's really obvious, look at how well she developed her counter narrative. You know, she didn't try to knock it off in a paragraph or a half of, of a short space. She let herself go with the voice quite a way. And there are some, some really strong ideas that come out here about the brother talking about almost like peer pressure from his brothers and, not being able to stand up to his brother. And then you really do get a genuine sense of apology. As Monty was reading, I was realizing how many times in this last paragraph we get, I'm sorry, how that becomes a refrain, just like fear became a refrain in Junot Diaz's piece, okay? But it winds up coming across as somebody really regretting having participated in a bullying, especially seeing how helpless the kid was and how, just a weak victim. So anyway, I thought this was really excellent. This assignment is meant to give you a chance to write in a really imaginative way like this. And I think it is a good warm up for then taking on your personal narrative. But as I said a few minutes ago, if you haven't done this already, it's too late now. You need to focus on your personal narrative. But all of you who did, there were several good ones. And all of you who did this assignment, I hope you found some benefit and got some enjoyment out of trying to look at something, look at this incident through the other brother's eyes, okay? So hold on just one second. All right. So who's here today that hasn't been introduced yet? Let me just sort of get let me just speak up if you haven't.
I haven't.
Who's that?
Amani.
Amani. Oh, okay. I thought you had, Monty. Thank you. Okay. Johnny, have you? Johnny,
yeah, I've been here since like the first class.
I know, but did you get to introduce yourself to everybody?
I think so. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know some of
I'm Johnny.
Yeah. Well, do think I wasn't sure, Johnny, but anyway, if you haven't, next time we'll have more time to do it. Okay. But we're going to stop there today. We're at 12:45. My apology again for the computer stuff. I will send a new link. I'm just going to recreate our message and see if I can avoid that problem. I don't know why that came up today, but I appreciate your effort to come back. You can see it. We've got to really cram here to get going. If when you start on your personal narrative, you have any questions or anything about it, feel free to contact me, but I hope you have what you need to get going. And if you think about those two essays, I think it will help you think about the kind of incident that might be worth doing. Okay? Anything else? All right. You have a great weekend, okay? And good luck getting started on your essay.
See ya.
You too.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.